Audio or video footage used in this video is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Horrific FX makes no claim of ownership and is simply using the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Hello and welcome to another video installment in Horrific FX's Top 13 Countdown series. For this video, we will be doing our top 13 Stephen King horror movies. Now, before we begin, I want to let you know that as we're talking about these, there will be spoilers, so just be aware of that. And to make this list is specifically Stephen King horror films. So films like The Green Mile, The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me will not be included on this list. This list is open to Stephen King movies based on his novels. So other films like Sleepwalkers, that was written specifically for the screen, is not included. Also, Creepshow is not included since it was not entirely written by Stephen King and was not based on Stephen King work beforehand. So again, this is just Stephen King horror movies that are based on his literary works. So let's get on with the episode here and start off with number 13. Number 13, The Graveyard Shift. Now, this one, when I was making the list, I had a little bit of a hard time with, and I know I'll get a lot of grief thrown my way because these two films are not that popular. I was debating between The Graveyard Shift or Thinner. I really like the story of Thinner and the premise, but I had to give the edge to The Graveyard Shift. Again, while it's not a largely popular film, I have always enjoyed this film. The whole aspects of the rats and the setting of the film really worked for me, and I thought it was great cinematography. It's always great to see Brad Dourif, who is famous for being the voice of Chucky. Always great to see him in a role. And the for those of you who don't know, it revolves around this um, small town. There's an employment, a place of work that everyone in the town seems to work at, and there's a rat slash monster problem in the basement, so to speak, and there's a cleanup crew over the 4th of July weekend to come and take care of it, and all the killings start occurring. And I don't want to go too much into the monster for fear of someone who hasn't seen it, even though I did say that there'll be spoilers. But the setting of it I really liked, especially the last part of the movie when they're going into the depths of the location and the great scenery there, like the hill of skulls and just the depths of the building. Terrific looking background for a film. Number 12, The Mist. Now, this was a film that sometimes I really enjoy, sometimes I don't enjoy as much. I'm not really a huge fan of creature movies. Stuff like that just don't really do it for me as much as you would think. So that being said, The Mist still is a great story, a fun watch, and if anything with this film, you have to give it credit for its gutsy ending of the film. It's a kick to the gut. Those of you who watch the movie and are devoted to have your heart and soul into that film, and then the ending comes. It's like I said, it's a kick to the gut, and I give the filmmakers credit because not that many movies are willing to take that kind of chance, and they did. Number 11, It, 1990. Now, one of the most popular miniseries in Stephen King history, the miniseries of It from 1990. Um, and as obvious, I'm including miniseries as part of the movies here on this list. It was really good. To be perfectly honest, I did not think that the remake would come close to what the original did. The original was such a good movie, and Tim Curry as Pennywise. So many iconic scenes. Of course, you think of Georgie and the sewer scene, and I always remember the library scene. It was real fun to watch, and some great, like I said, great performance by Tim Curry, um, and a nice casting job too. So many popular TV show actors, and John Ritter was classic. I've always been a huge fan of John Ritter. It was nice to see him in this movie. Um, at times it can be a little draggy, but that happens with Stephen King miniseries. They have to fill so many hours that it kind of drags, but still a fun watch, very entertaining film. Number 10, The Stand. Now, this is the highest rated miniseries on the countdown. There were so many good miniseries that I personally liked. Of course, as I just mentioned, the It miniseries, of course, The Stand. Tommy Knockers was another one of my favorites that just missed the list, but definitely The Stand. A great, great visual treat, and did a great job depicting the apocalypse and the post-apocalyptic world and what will be left and the evil, and just a really, really good, entertaining miniseries. Again, just like I mentioned, it times kind of seems a little boring and drawn out, but very entertaining, and especially for a miniseries based on a book that was over well over 1,000 pages long. So definitely recommend checking that film out. Number 9, Cujo. Now, of course, Stephen King is so famous for taking so many different things and turning it into a horrifying situation, from a clown uh, to the end of the world to a gypsy curse, and a dog is no exception. Of course, now people think of dogs being so terrifying and all that. Before Cujo, really, you didn't think of dogs being all really that terrifying, and Cujo really upped the game on making a dog an animal creepy. Of course, the tale of a family pet that gets rabies and starts attacking, and simple premise, but worked so well. And Dee Wallace, her portrayal in the film was terrific, as she always seems to be in her roles. The dog just had a great vicious look to him, and very entertaining movie. Number 8, Christine. Now, as I mentioned in the segment before, when I was talking about Cujo, how Stephen King can turn so many different things into something scary. A car, you have to admit, is a tough one to think of. Well, how the heck are you going to turn a car into a horrifying monster? But of course, Stephen King did it, and uh, not only that, but then for the film, the great direction of the legendary John Carpenter. You think of John Carpenter and Stephen King working on a film together. Wow, you immediately think it's going to be good, and Christine did not disappoint. Um, the story basically of a killer car, and it worked so well, and some great cinematography. Again, it just looks like a John Carpenter film, and great music, and a very, very entertaining and very fun film. Number 7, Children of the Corn, 1984. Now, this Linda Hamilton starring film is, in my opinion, a very underrated horror film. It does have a small cult following, but in my opinion, does not get nearly the amount of love that I think it should. It is basically a story about uh, this couple that, while driving across country, um, accidentally run over someone and is stuck in this town where there's no adults and it's just the children. And the children are following this weird religious cult leader, and who's a child, and all hell ensues from there. And the setting being in this town in the middle of America, just surrounded by corn and the emptiness in the town. Again, no adults. Just very unnerving and unsettling. And the big thing for me is the characters of Isaac and Malachi. Uh, Isaac with his religious tones, and Malachi with just his thirst to kill. And again, when I think of when you mention this film to me, I always think of three different things. I think of Isaac and Malachi. I always think of the poster. I always remember that poster of the corn with the eyes in the corn, and then that hand holding up that weapon. And then the famous opening scene, which is one of my favorite opening scenes in a horror movie. Just the older people in the town going into the diner after church, and then the children with their slaughter of everyone. Just so great to see. Nice visual. And then Isaac looking in from the window, just with a little gleeful smile. And this film is a very, very good film. Highly recommend it. It does have numerous sequels and even a Sci-Fi Channel remake and more sequels after that. But the original 1984 film is a classic in my mind. Number 6, It, 2017. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I'm not a huge fan of remakes, and I did not have high expectations going into the remake of It, especially the very first picture. I think it was Entertainment Weekly releasing a picture image of Pennywise in his full costume. I was not a fan at first, but I went into it with high hopes. Just about 3 months before it was released, my teenage daughter, sat down and watched it for the first time with me, and she liked the original. So, of course, we were all excited to go and see. She was excited to go see the remake, especially since she has a little thing for Finn Wolfhard, who's from Stranger Things and in the It remake. But anyways, we went in to watch it, and I actually was blown away by how entertained I was. Very rarely will I be that entertained by a remake. And one of the few times I actually think the remake surpassed the original. Now, is it perfect? No. Are there a lot of people that don't like it? Yeah. But there were a lot more who enjoyed it. Bill Skarsgård, to me, did an outstanding job playing Pennywise. And that's where I really was blown away, because I didn't think anyone was going to come close to Tim Curry's portrayal of Pennywise. And Bill Skarsgård had a nice, fun, but creepy portrayal of Pennywise. Number 5, The Dead Zone. Now, this is, if I remember correctly, one of the earliest Stephen King films that I had ever seen, and I really loved it. This film was very entertaining, a great premise. Christopher Walken did an outstanding performance. Christopher Walken's character is involved in an accident. He wakes up, um, has some health issues, and all of a sudden he wakes up with this ability. When he touches someone, he can see what's going to happen to them in the future. And not only is it horrifying to him, but helping to solve murders and preventing uh, accidents. But also, a good question is, if you knew something horrible was going to happen in the future and thousands of lives were going to be lost, would you step in to stop it? And that film asks a nice question about that, and it's a terrific, terrific film. Highly recommend it. One of the very first actual Stephen King novels that I read too. So definitely recommend checking out The Dead Zone. Number 4, Misery, the film that launched Kathy Bates. Of course, she's famous now for being in seasons of American Horror Story, but some people seem to forget just how great she was in Misery. Even she won the Academy Award for her portrayal of Annie Wilkes. The film revolves around Paul Sheldon, a writer who is involved in a car accident and is saved by his number one fan. And as she nurses him back to health, he starts to get a little upset and worried because she's his number one fan and she's a little bit psychotic and crazy. And she definitely takes psychotic and crazy and fan obsessed to fan obsession to a new level. And of course, the famous hobbling scene where with her and the sledgehammer and the wood between the board between his legs, between his feet. What an iconic scene! Of course, that changed from the book. Those of you who have not read the book, she actually chopped off his feet with an axe. If you look at one of the first original covers of Misery, you actually see the cover, the door open, and her shadow in the doorway holding an axe. But still, a great performance in that film. Rob Reiner did a great directorial job on that film, and everyone, even James Caan's performance, especially considering, probably 80% of that movie was lying in a bed. But a very, very fun movie to watch, and great atmosphere and setting, and nice tension. Number 3, The Shining, 1980. Now, I put on this list the original one, of course. There is a TV miniseries of The Shining, but that in no way came close to the original Stanley Kubrick. Even though Stephen King himself said he basically despised this film because it shifted away from the original source material so much, but still, it is a Stephen King movie. It was based on a Stephen King book, and whether it deviated from it or not, how much it deviated, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining was a terrific horror film. Of course, Jack Nicholson's iconic performance is legendary and adds a really good creep factor to it. And Shelley Duvall's acting was great. So much of the film was just so iconic, and on so many people's list at Halloween time, you always have everyone's list of, the scariest horror movies ever, and The Shining is undoubtedly always in everyone's list. And great setting with the Overlook Hotel, the atmosphere of it being the cold, snowy season in Colorado. Again, just a great, great film. Number 2, Pet Sematary, 1989. Now, this is a huge favorite of mine. It's number 2 on the list, but it is like basically like 1A and 1B with the first film on the list. Pet Sematary is such an iconic horror movie for me. I read the book when I was real little and really loved it. And I even remember Stephen King himself saying that when he was writing it, it scared him so much that he had to put the pause the writing and put it away for some time before you can finish writing it. And I was so excited when I heard that the movie was coming out, and unfortunately, my pet cat died actually like 2 weeks before I saw Pet Cemetery, so that kind of was a little bit tough for me. And it, since I'm such a fan of horror movies, it takes a lot to get me and to creep me out. Pet Cemetery is the one movie that really creeped me out. Again, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the fact my pet cat died shortly before watching the film. And I knew what was coming because, again, I'd read the book. But the film had such a great essence to it. The feeling of the film, the setting. I always think of Judd's house when Lewis goes in there and just how everything looked and how the pet cemetery looked and the Indian burial ground. Anyone who hasn't seen the film, the story revolves around Lewis Creed and his family, his wife, his daughter, and infant son. And they moved to Maine, as almost every Stephen King movie is. And in their yard, in their backyard, is a pet cemetery, and beyond that is an ancient Indian burial ground, where if you bury something there, it comes back to life without a soul and kills. So obviously, he buries their pet cat that dies, and it comes back as a soulless living corpse. And again, spoilers, but then later on in the film, their son gets hit by a truck, and he buries him in ancient Indian burial ground, and everything ensues from there. And Mary Lambert did such a terrific job directing this film, and just a great job, and very, very entertaining and dark horror movie, which I highly recommend checking out. Number 1, Carrie, 1976. Now, to me, this was the ultimate Stephen King film. Again, just slightly ahead of Pet Sematary, but this film really packed so much. Had great characters, great performances, great directing, great writing, great setting. Everything was really great about this film. The film revolves around this young girl, Carrie, who's shy and awkward, teased and harassed at school, and then goes home and is harassed by her mother, who is an ultra religious character. And the film basically involves then prom night when everyone pulls a prank on her. Of course, the legendary scene of dropping the pig's blood, and she goes completely postal on them with her telekinetic powers. And just a great job with that whole end scene, the whole scene of the movie, the final act from the prom on was just great. Sissy Spacek did such a great job in her portrayal of Carrie. And the ending, of course, the surprise ending at the end was so famous and iconic. Of course, it actually had a made for TV remake, and then the newer remake and a lesser known sequel, The Rage Carrie 2. But the original Carrie is by far and away the greatest in the series and my personal favorite Stephen King movie. All right, and that will wrap up this video for the Horrific FX Top 13 Stephen King horror movies. If you like, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. And thank you all for your continued viewership of my channel here, and of my top 13 countdown series. I hope you're enjoying them. If you have any more suggestions you'd like to see for a top 13 countdown, please feel free to contact me and visit my website at horrificfx.com.